recording is of a book entitled The De Facto Sasquatch, written by Bobby Short. There are many names of various people, places, First Nation, and Native American words that I am sure to mispronounce, and I apologize for doing so. I tried to find pronunciations, but my resources are limited. Please don't let that hinder listening to the book. Please feel free to leave comments, like, and subscribe if you choose to do so, but most of all, enjoy the reading. The De Facto Sasquatch by Bobby Short. Foreword by Steve Samar. Bobby Short used to say the only subject more enigmatic than the Sasquatch peoples is Sasquatchery. Sasquatchery is an encompassing term for folks interested in or actively researching the global phenomena of the Sasquatch peoples. The Bigfoot Encounters website bridges the difference between knowing and believing. Those of us who have experienced a face-to-face encounter are a clear, unequivocal daylight sighting which changes one's perspective from belief to knowledge in the clarity of the moment. We know the Sasquatch peoples are real flesh and blood, bipedal, primal people. Sasquatchery includes those folks who believe the Sasquatch peoples are real, spending time, blood, and treasure validating their beliefs. Bobby Short's website, www.bigfootencounters.com, is a compendium of data, sighting reports, articles, academic papers, and folklore, a splendid testament and legacy of data, free of cost or advertising. Bobby's manuscript, The De Facto Sasquatch, was finished but unedited at the time of her passing. Her grandson has maintained the website to date in honor of her legacy. Bobby's family agreed to the editing and posting in a PDF format of the De Facto Sasquatch, free of cost to the interested public, as an enduring tribute to her memory and legacy. Bobby Short was a champion of governmental recognition and protection from hunting and harassment of the North American ancient Aboriginal peoples. They are deserving of our respect and peaceful coexistence. Live and let live. Bobby Short was a mother, a grandmother, a nursing professional, and superb researcher. She was a remarkable woman. I treasure our relationship. I think of her daily. Rest in peace, baby doll. May God bless all who knew and loved her. Amen. Some folks in Sasquatchery are legends in their own minds. Bobby Short was a legend in her own time. The De Facto Sasquatch. The phrase de facto is Latin. The term is used to characterize something that must be accepted, but is yet prohibited and denounced. I first heard the words de facto used in a videotaped interview John Bindernagel did with a Canadian television crew. So that the record is clear, I unashamedly hijacked John's terminology. The words he used, de facto Sasquatch, struck me as fitting, and despite our differences, I'm a strict conventionalist, and John an ape theorist. The term he used seemed apropos. The North American Sasquatch is widely reported to be an upright, walking humanoid that ranges from the southern forested Sierra Madre Range in Mexico north to the far reaches of the Canadian Northwest Territories, the Yukon, and beautiful wild Alaska. Recorded cases come from the eastern seaboard of the United States, west to the Pacific coastal waters, and all states and provinces in between. There are no existing reports from the state of Hawaii, but the Hawaiian culture as a whole has a history of the giant man they call Aikanaka, as well as little people whose height is 2.5 to 3 feet tall. This book speaks to these life forms, those areas they inhabit, and no other. Statistics tell us that the foot size of the child Sasquatch ranges from the infant child size of 4 to 6 inches to 9 inches, cast by Roger Patterson in summer of 1967. The adult at an average height of 7 to 8 feet tall, with a few listed much taller. Most adult track imprints range from 14 inches to a staggering report of 22 inches. All manner of weight guessing goes on in research, but no one really knows. Guesstimates center on an adult weight being between 450 to 800 pounds. The Sasquatch has been described as having either a prolific amount of body hair or, in many cases, sparse to little body hair. The descriptive verbiage covering hair length is endless. Both males and females have been described as bearded, though most witnesses do not notice facial features. Hair color varies, but the standard is black, auburn, or dark brown, with an occasional light or white Sasquatch being reported. 2 cases that I have with blue eyes, and 1 green-eyed, red-haired, bearded adult from Arizona. My stats reflect the eyes being described as dark in color, with whites of the eye obvious. The sclera of the human eye is white in contrast to an ape's eye, where the pigmented sclera is dark brown to black. From east to west, south to north, the skin tones range from Caucasian to varying colors in African American coloring. Little is known about how the Sasquatch are able to thrive in adverse conditions, yet they apparently do in some manner modern humans haven't figured out yet. They are for the most part shy, elusive, reclusive, and withdrawn. Anecdotal accounts suggest the Sasquatch prefer seclusion and isolation. They go out of their way to avoid contact with civilized man, with very few exceptions. The volume of evidence comes from chance encounters. No credible evidence has ever been documented by the long-term relationships claimed by habituators or other interactors with the Sasquatch. Domesticated Sasquatches are unheard of in research. Driven by what appears to be an insatiable curiosity about human activity, they often give themselves away and are seen in their natural settings gawking at us. The bulk of sighting reports state informants are startled to such a degree that they either don't remember details or don't stick around long enough to determine details. There are a few exceptions, though. DNA may give us their genetic makeup, but it won't tell us anything about their social structure, their culture, or what they consider acceptable behavior. The Sasquatch is generally regarded as passive and standoffish, but there have been reports of aggression and outright hostility when challenged or threatened. Usually the hostility comes after a member of a Sasquatch family unit has been shot at or killed. They will apparently retaliate with brute force when provoked. There are reports of rage and resentment that no man would want unleashed in their presence. I've included those reports and also a number of accidental and deliberate shootings of the Sasquatch. I've taken the time to pull from 3 decades worth of reported behaviors. There are very few known behaviors. For the most part, what I've attempted to do here is strip away extraneous verbiage in each case file, eliminating the personal feelings of fear from the informants, thereby placing the focus only on the described behavior of the Sasquatch. I am fortunate enough to have acquired some really wonderful, heartwarming stories and actual accounts that I investigated for myself on site. Some of the stories I've left fully intact so as not to destroy the integral flow of the narrative. This work was not written to persuade or impress. It was not written for financial gain. It is not a scientific endeavor. I wrote it only to chronicle a limited bit of information specific to North America and report the behaviors relevant to the Sasquatch that I found or personally experienced myself. If you believe the Sasquatch is an animal or just an ape, or if you believe in otherworldly Bigfoot, this book isn't for you. In 30 years, the only reports I've read about a Sasquatch with alien origins came from those who embraced that belief already in research. I've received no report through my website or newsletter suggesting the Sasquatch has special abilities generally reserved for deities or God himself. This book covers the conventional theory that the Sasquatch are real people who lived wild in the forests of North America. Bobby Short, 2012. Editor's note. Cover story. Rob Roy Menzes was not aware of this story, nor was Bill Lee aware of the cover art being created by Rob. It was a match made by synchronicity. Bill Lee, Kamchatka Peninsula, Bigfoot fighting grizzly. In this next story, a grizzly bear came to its end because there was another Sasquatch nearby. Bill Lee, the voice of radio for 34 years, contributed a most unusual secondhand story a friend of his in Idaho related to him. The story involved an all-out fight between an attacking grizzly bear and a female Sasquatch that occurred on the Kamchatka Peninsula in the late 1980s. Lee made a point of reminding me that the location of this report was very near the Sakhalin Islands, where the Soviets shot down a 747 civilian airliner, Korean KAL-007, in September of 1983. Remember that one? The peninsula looms low between the Sea of Okhotsk and the Bering Sea. It is a desolate bit of real estate. Lee's friend, Frank, was on a trophy bear hunt with guides. The guides knew there were Bigfoot in the area, but regularly hunted the bears in that region. One of the guides told Frank a tale about a big battle that occurred between a female Bigfoot and a grizzly. The grizz, or brown bear, apparently charged or somehow attacked the female Bigfoot, and the male Bigfoot came to her aid. Frank said the area of the confrontation was about an acre in size, and it looked like two bulldozers had gone at it. The trackers refused to track the Bigfoot, but they did track down the grizzly. It was harvested. In the course of tracking that bear down on snowmobiles, the men wandered away from the snowmobiles. Upon returning, they found a snow machine had been thrown down an embankment. Lee said it didn't get there by itself. The hunter's guide skinned hundreds of bears in his time. He was surprised to see large teeth marks on the back of the bear hide once it was skinned. They deduced the male Bigfoot jumped the bear from behind and bit into its back in defense of the female Bigfoot. Bill Lee, 2011. History shows that often the loudest skeptics are those who know nothing about the subject in question. They have not studied it and will not do so for the very reason that they do not believe in it. Nevertheless, they are prepared to take the time to pronounce judgment on it. Ivan Sanderson, 1970. Editor's note. Bobby was hesitant to include her own sighting in the de facto Sasquatch. Unbeknownst to either of us, both Rob Roy Menzes and I were encouraging her to do so. Rob had gone so far as to sketch her sighting based on her description of what she had seen. Rob's sketches are included here. Many thanks to Chris Millett for dredging up from her computer files the first part of her sighting, and gratitude to the fine folks at Sasquatch Central for allowing me to transcribe the interview they did with Bobby. Combined, the two parts provide a good sighting report. The de facto Sasquatch isn't about me, it's about the Sasquatch, so I don't want to spend a number of pages talking about me or my sighting. But people seemingly want to know what prompted me to devote nearly 30 years to the subject. I'll talk about that briefly. It was a simple curiosity and a want to learn all I could about a strange being I saw while vacationing in Northern California. In September 1985, I left my young children with their grandmother and went backpacking with friends. I've been asked many times where specifically. I always thought it was Humboldt County because that is where my dad, my Uncle Ralph, Uncle Ray, Chuck, and a family friend, Johnny Castian, used to hunt deer and in summer fish for steelhead. The men in my family referred to the area as the Humboldt. I have fond memories as a little girl seeing the men each with a catch of fish or a trophy mule deer. I never took the time to retrace the route until 2006 and found it may have been the Klamath River in Del Norte County, California, but the location matters little. We had packed 3 days in and had just crossed over the river. The trip was great fun. We had along with us a couple of botanists from the Netherlands, which made conversation rather animated but interesting. This was at a time in my life when I knew nothing about Bigfoot. I had not heard the name, nor did I know of the film attributed to Roger Patterson. We made camp that night with the intent to reach our pickup point by Wednesday of that week. I woke up the next morning. The others on the trip were still in their respective tents, sleeping in. I remember setting the coffee pot on the fire and headed off into the tree-lined fern field to relieve myself. That's when it happened. Statement of Bobby's encounters transcribed from Sasquatch Central. Bobby. In 1985, I was a much younger nurse and dedicated, and I had always been a backpacker since the age of 6. We were up in Northern California and had packed in 3 days and had just crossed over the Smith River. That morning, I got up and stoked the fire a little bit and put the coffee on. I needed to empty my bladder, so I went off into the bushes. There was this small plateau of hip-deep ferns. Beautiful place, just gorgeous. The sun was coming from my back, 2 columns of trees, and the air was crisp. It was just a beautiful morning, and I was enjoying the walk as much as relieving myself. I stood up out of the ferns to adjust my Levi's, and I saw movement in my right peripheral vision, and I looked, and I saw this image coming. I wasn't sure, and I finished with my britches and looked again. I had never heard the word Bigfoot, so you have to understand that I realized right quick that we were 3 days in, and we hadn't seen anybody in 2 days, really. It was deep in the bush, and to see this woman coming at me with a prolific growth of hair, buck naked, it's hard to wrap your mind around this. Interviewer. So it was definitely female then. You noticed that right off the bat. Bobby. Absolutely, she was a female. Interviewer. Did she seem aggressive, or was she just kind of interested in you and what you may have been doing? Bobby. She wasn't the least bit interested in me. In hindsight, she was on a journey somewhere. She never broke stride. She came from my right, passed within, say, 10 to 12. I'm not good with feet. 10 to 12 feet, maybe a little bit more from me. She was close enough that I could see her eyelashes. She passed off to my right in an uphill walk. She wasn't extraordinarily large in height, but she was bulky. She had these enormous shoulders. Her torso was barreled. She had no waist. She did not have perky breasts. They were hanging empty, nipples up. They moved with every step she took. These were enormous strides, by the way. She was going somewhere. Where? I don't know, but there she was. You end up asking yourself all kinds of things. At first I thought it was a joke that my backpackers were playing on me, which we were prone to do in those days. But nothing I saw made sense. I will say this, that nothing I saw brought to mind the word ape. Nothing. Not even her prolific growth of hair. It was hair, but it grew about her body in places that is more like the hair on a man's chest. It wasn't fur like a bear. It wasn't fur like a chimpanzee. It was hair, and there were even worn spots between her arms and the torso where her arms would rub against her body. Clearly worn away hair. She wasn't old. She was not well, and that was something I wrestled with. I was so intent on her face and other features that that got by me. But from her general appearance, she was old. She was scarred. She had an oval scar on her left shoulder. You might think she had been lanced with something. There was no hair on it. It was just a huge scar on her left shoulder right under the clavicle. Bobby's second sighting. Bobby. It is also rather unremarkable, except that one was a male, and I had never seen a male before. He was a butte. This was in Arizona, for those who keep a record. The Arizona mountains above Prescott. I've been following a rancher with acreage there, and we went up there at one point on horseback. We're coming back along a canyon ridge, and this rancher and his 4 sons were in front of me. Actually, 2 sons in front of me and 2 horses behind me. The fellow in front of me said, 3 o'clock, right quick, and I looked across the canyon, maybe 50 yards, maybe 75. I'm not good with this. But anyway, they were close enough that I recognized right away what I was looking at. They were standing side by side when I first caught sight of them. She ducked into the tree line real quick, and she was very pregnant, full term. He stayed out in the open and twiddled his fingers. We kept going on. He just stood there. Great big huge fellow. There's something to reckon with if you want to be afraid. Interviewer. Yeah, I wouldn't want to make him mad, right? Bobby. I don't think I would want to make him mad. I don't think I would want to mess with his lady friend either. Interviewer. Laughter. He was actually twiddling his thumbs, or were you just saying that? Bobby. No, he was nervously messing with his fingers. It was hard for me to see what exactly was going on with the hands. I just know that his fingers were moving, and whatever he was doing, it looked like something nervously going on with his fingers. Maybe the fact that we were there. I don't know. It's hard to say. To be continued, and thank you for listening. There would be many parts to the reading of this book. If you like this reading, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to be sure to catch the future parts. We welcome comments, but please be considerate of others. If you have had an experience with or about Bigfoot, cryptids, UFOs, paranormal, or any other strange happenings, and would like to share them on our channel to be read, please email them to sharingofstrangestories@gmail.com. We hope to establish a channel that can provide an outlet for people to speak freely of their experiences without ridicule from others. There are many of us out there that have had these experiences and have faced the ridicule. Emails will be read on our channel, so please keep them family friendly. If you want to remain anonymous and do not want your name read to the public, please put that at the beginning of the email or in the subject line. Thanks again for listening, and stay safe.